Let me begin by introducing the cyber diplomacy agenda, which generally includes the following items: norms, CBMs, international law in cyberspace, deterrence, and response to cyber operations in international security context. We also are discussing internet governance and internet freedom, foreign policy implications of new technologies, cyber capacity building, and development assistance. Promoting cyber resilience and fight with cybercrime globally have become very important. The diplomats, of course, are also concentrating on relations with allies, partners, and international organizations. And we also engage with academia, civil society, and the private sector. Let me start by discussing the issues of international security. Major focus of cyber discussions within international security is related to the framework for cyber stability and responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Developed under the UN First Committee and reflected in the 2010, 2013, and 2015 consensus reports of the group of governmental experts. The framework includes states' commitment to adhere to existing international law, to follow non-binding peacetime norms of responsible state behavior, to promote confidence-building measures and capacity-building efforts. Implementing this framework is a main goal for most of our countries on regional and global levels. International law plays a crucial role in maintaining stability and security in cyberspace. There is an agreement on UN General Assembly level that international law, particularly UN Nations Charter, applies in cyberspace as it applies in all other domains. This is the basis from which we must move forward. All states benefit from upholding a rules-based order in cyberspace. This means addressing the question, how do certain provisions of international law apply in cyberspace, as well as what are the legal consequences if those rules are violated, and what are the remedies available to injured state. Thus far, these have been the main questions. We are now seeing increasing developments in addressing legal issues in several fora. We also see more and more countries presenting their own views on how international law applies. I very much welcome and encourage these statements. Existing international law has laid a solid normative framework for state actions, regardless of means or environment of these actions. New technologies will not change this fact, and unique characteristics of cyberspace should not be seen as constraints to the application of international law. We must continue our collective efforts to understand legal issues when it comes to state conduct in cyberspace. Through global and regional capacity building initiatives, we can put forward our best efforts to understand the existing rules of the road. Secondly, we also are implementing now confidence-building measures and norms of responsible state behavior, which are equally important part of our global effort to ensure stability in cyberspace. The 2015 GG report has stipulated 11 norms that we should implement now. These discussions are currently ongoing in the UN First Committee. It is also important that the regional organizations will engage in cyber confidence-building process. At the regional level, states should develop and implement confidence-building and transparency measures that will enhance predictability of state behavior in cyberspace. The OSCE has developed 2 sets of cyber confidence-building measures, and work is ongoing on cyber CBMs in the ASEAN Regional Forum and in Organization of American States. The issues concerning international security in cyberspace will be covered today by lectures of Dr. James Lewis, Professor Katrin Lotrianti, and Dr. Kubo Machak. Let me now turn to the next set of issues that cyber diplomats are addressing, which is related to internet freedom, internet governance, and multi-stakeholder model of the internet. Internet governance refers to the development of norms, principles, and standards in relation to how internet functions. In the heart of the internet governance ecosystem, there are several technical and norms creation organizations such as ICANN. And the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance by governments, the private sector, and civil society has led us to the interoperable global internet that we all enjoy right now. and have especially seen its importance during the last months. Internet Governance Forum is a body that brings together different multi-stakeholder community actors to discuss internet related issues. It is transparent and bottom-up forum. In addition, we also value the role of the private sector, academia and civil society very much in our multi-stakeholder community for internet governance and cybersecurity. We have to keep in mind that the private sector is the global infrastructure where cyberspace is developed, operated, and maintained. The private firms are the ones who are providing us the cyberspace, and therefore this sector is a critical actor in the realm of cybersecurity. We have seen very useful initiatives by the private sector to strengthen the current cyberspace, such as the Paris Call, Cybersecurity Tech Accord, and the others. Many private sector initiatives take the form of agreements among firms of security professionals related to behavior, including cooperation, information sharing, and respect for human rights. The first Code of Ethics can be seen as an example of this. Other initiatives by the private sector include more practical guidelines on the mitigation of various threats or on best practices of various technologies, such as the International Anti-Botnet Guideline. The private sector is also uniquely placed to develop and agree on various technical standards, codes of ethics, and professional codes of conduct. Many of the private sector initiatives are driven by the understanding that most of the infrastructure that is targeted and abused in malicious ways is produced, managed, and operated by the private sector. Unlike in traditional security threats, threats to digital security often occur for everyday citizens' computers and mobile devices. Also, the civil society plays a vital role in advocating for non-governmental and non-business organizations and movements in a larger ecosystem of digital domain. Civil society protects and advances ordinary people and individual rights and stands for underrepresented or marginalized communities, voices, and issues. Although many civil society initiatives and organizations operate on local levels and smaller scales, many global initiatives have been created and are driven by actors in this sector. Academia, including think tanks, are important for disseminating and creation of knowledge on cyber diplomacy and cybersecurity. There are a plethora of research projects, academic programs, curricula, and other initiatives. However, today we are still talking about the cybersecurity and cybersecurity as we understand these issues in the terms of state behavior. And I hope that in some of our next lecture series we can also talk about the broader multi-stakeholder environment and all these efforts in this broader setting. As a next very important item that the cyber diplomacy is concerned with is internet freedom. Freedom online and internet freedom includes freedom of expression, freedom of association, access to information, and freedom from online censorship. There is a landmark UN resolution from 2016 on internet freedom, which states that same rights that people have offline must be also protected online. Internet Freedom Coalition coordinates closely diplomatic efforts and engages with civil society and the private sector to advance internet freedom globally. It is a central foreign policy priority recently that the internet freedom will be followed. As a founding member of Freedom Online Coalition, Estonia is deeply committed to the human rights and freedoms proclaimed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We believe that the human rights that people have offline must be also protected online. We are committed to support internet freedom and protect human rights online worldwide. Estonia shares concerns about certain measures introduced in response to the COVID-19 crisis, including the use of certain surveillance practices, internet shutdowns, and content moderation and censorship that may negatively impact the enjoyment of human rights. Such measures pose a risk of discrimination. State-sponsored obstruction of human rights is a direct challenge to the Freedom of Online Coalition goal to protect and promote and exercise human rights online, and to maintain open, free, secure, reliable, and interoperable internet. We are concerned by the measures taken by different malicious actors also to gain access to private information and spreading disinformation online. States should promote transparency and independent, effective domestic oversight related to electronic surveillance, use of contact takedown notices, limitations of restrictions on online content or user access, and other similar measures, while committing ourselves to do the same. And finally, we have a second part of our lecture today dedicated to the issue of capacity building. Capacity building is an increasingly important topic on the agenda of cyber diplomacy, because it is the capacity building that the majority of the countries globally are now concerned about. And in a larger UN setting, we have discussed the issues of capacity building, whether it will be the implementation of the norms of responsible state behavior, confidence building measures, or international commitments, international law. Capacity building underpins all these efforts. What we actually mean by capacity building is often less clear by several actors also thinking different things when they are talking about capacity building. And let us maybe elaborate a bit in this introductory lecture what are the different work streams within the broader capacity building agenda, and how this lecture also could bring more information to the audience about capacity building. Digitalization is a supporting element, and it is boosting growth and achieving the same goals as the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Digitalization today is also affecting all areas of human activity. The security of digital ecosystem is something that we are all concerned with. The cybersecurity is a distinctly separate area also in capacity building, and we should aim to integrate basic cybersecurity elements into all digitalization projects of development cooperation. The challenges people and countries face in cyberspace are common. Increasing the capacities of all stakeholders and making them more resilient to interference and cyber attacks benefits everybody. Cyber capacity building encompasses both cybersecurity and combating cybercrime. And this continues to be the priorities of international cooperation for all our global cyber community. It is very important to raise awareness globally about cyber threats and cybercrime, and especially in the times of the global pandemic. There are already several very useful international instruments that could be taken as a blueprint for further efforts. For instance, the Budapest Convention remains the efficient international legal framework for combating cybercrime, as it serves as a global instrument of reference for international cooperation. Estonia welcomes the possibility for the non-member states of the Council of Europe to accede to the Budapest Convention, as this is the best model for countries seeking to develop their own national legislation, and it provides all elements for developing the corresponding domestic legal frameworks. It is also critical for everyone globally to be acquainted with the basic principles of cybersecurity. In Estonia, we have put a lot of effort in ensuring that our education system not only provides our children with the basic digital skills, but also make sure that they understand the basics of cybersecurity or cyber hygiene. Cyber hygiene courses are also included in what we are offering to our partners, because we think that end-user awareness is very important in achieving cybersecurity. In addition, the conceptual and legislative and policy work in order to increase cyber resilience remains very important. The cyber capacity building could be a very vast field with many components. And the key components, what we see here, would include advancing cyber incident response capacity on technical and organizational level, building computer emergency response teams, developing national cyber strategy, policy, legislation, setting up public-private partnerships for cyber resilience of critical infrastructure, training, education and exercises, developing specialized cybersecurity courses at undergraduate and graduate level, and also creating basic cyber skills and cyber hygiene training for all end users. It all looks very domestic and something that all the nations should do themselves. But of course, today you will also hear more about the global efforts that have been taken in order to increase the capacity building options for the countries that might need some assistance in this respect. For instance, there is a global coordination effort underway, which is called Global Forum for Cyber Expertise. During the course today, you will hear from Mr. Chris Painter what is the state of play with global cyber capacity building and how the coordination is organized. Also, there is an upcoming cybersecurity multi-donor trust fund under the World Bank, which will start supporting cyber capacity building projects in medium and low-income countries. And of course, in the UN First Committee, we are discussing the awareness raising, and capacity building is one of the problems that comes up quite often when we are discussing the cyber issues in the United Nations frameworks. Let me stress the very efficient efforts that the European Union has been taken in terms of capacity building. European Union has launched several systematic training programs since 2013 that is systematically linking cyber capacity building to development cooperation. There are multiple projects underway, and those focuses of the projects are mostly cyber resilience or fighting with cybercrime. In 2013, when the European Union started to focus on the cyber capacity building issues, the first item which was needing most of the attention was addressing cybercrime globally. There were several projects, including CLASI and CLASI Plus, that have been set up together with the Council of Europe, and that have helped to train a very large number of judicial and law enforcement personnel in all over the world, in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa. And this effort is still ongoing. The training efforts by the Council of Europe jointly with the European Union and other partners from the world to address the cybercrime globally have been so far the largest capacity building projects that we have seen. And all of our European countries have been contributing to those projects. The second work stream for the European Union has been the increase of cyber resilience. There is a track record of a couple of projects which have taken place, like Cyber for Dev and some others, where focus is to build certs, to create national cybersecurity strategies and national cyber legislation. And there are some other quite useful efforts going on the way in European eastern and southern neighborhood in terms of cyber capacity building. The European Union so far has been the largest donor for cyber capacity building, with approximately cumulatively 100 million euros spent on this area, and this number is growing. So what we have seen now recently in the European Union is that there is an attempt to systematize all these efforts and also to coordinate better and to create the possibilities and options to make sure that the delivery of the global capacity building efforts through EU projects will be more streamlined. And for that, we have the EU CyberNet project created, which Estonia is leading, Estonia is leading the consortium for the EU CyberNet, together with Germany, Finland, and Luxembourg. Today, you will hear more about this project by Mr. Siim Alatalu, who is going to introduce the basics for how the CyberNet coordination project will evolve, and also it will have the possibilities to link up with global partners. Cyber diplomacy only can be strong if we all are able to make sure that the national efforts of cybersecurity are provided, and there is national cyber resilience. The critical infrastructure that we are actually protecting, whether we do it as a project for national cyber resilience or whether we want to implement the global norms of state behavior or confidence building measures, everything that we do in these terms also needs very clear national structures, national responsibilities, and national vision, how we are going to do our cyberspace more stable. You probably have heard this sentence that global cyberspace can be as strong as its weakest link. And maybe it is a very often repeated sentence, but it is true. We cannot have a truly open, safe, and secure cyberspace if we do not pay attention to national cyber resilience. There are many elements in building resilience, but let me finish today by explaining the Estonian model, how we are ensuring the protection of our networks and required national coordination. During my time as a cyber diplomat in the Estonian system, I find myself talking about the Estonian cyber model 50% of the time, because the number of the delegations that are coming to us and asking about these issues is still quite large. And I think it's also the very important mission for cyber diplomats to introduce the national models to other nations and make sure that there is more resilience provided in these terms. In the end of 2018, Estonia has adopted a third generation cyber strategy, and the previous ones date back to 2008 and 2013. In these consecutive strategies, we have laid out the main principles and goals for national cyber policy. First, we have understood that in order to have efficient national cyber resilience system, one has to have clear national strategic goals, governance and coordination mechanisms created or strengthened. The national strategic goals usually are happening in the form of the national cyber strategy, because what you need to do is to bring together quite a large number of different stakeholders and ministries and agencies in your nation. The coordination on national level is something that is a must in the beginning. But of course, in addition to intergovernmental coordination, also each of our countries needs to establish and maintain partnership with the private sector, because the private sector owns and runs the critical infrastructure in most of our nations. The national public-private partnership for the cybersecurity is something which is unique for each nation, depending on its size and on its resources, on its institutional and historical traditions. We can observe different models of national cyber resilience throughout the European Union and possibly throughout the world. There are even more of those models. And each nation needs to find its own model, how they solve this question, how they build a public-private partnership on national level. What then needs to be done on national level is to make sure that there is an escalation mechanism of cyber crisis to the strategic decision-making level and to the national crisis management. The coordination and information exchange on national level with different agencies and ministries remains the key. Also, when we talk about escalation and mainstreaming of cyber issues, it is vital that the top decision-making layer in both the public and private sector is involved in cyber decisions. In Estonia, we have created the National Cybersecurity Council in 2008, and it is still a very relevant body. It is a very high-level body, including the permanent secretaries, who are the highest level civil servants in the Estonian system from different ministries, and they are doing the review of the national strategy implementation and also the decisions on resources and new strategic requirements for national cyber resilience. And last but not least, education, exercises and training remains the key when we want to build secure cyberspace. Sometimes we are comparing cyberspace with some other capabilities. And then we see that in cyberspace, we do not have very expensive equipment usually. We have the ICT technology. But actually what we need to value in cyberspace is our people, and to make sure that we have enough specialists and skilled cyber experts in our countries, because only the cyber experts in our countries are the ones that are able to build cyber resilient systems, and also in times when we are either attacked or have crisis, it's our local experts that we are relying on. We cannot fly in massive number of foreign experts when we are under attack. So it only can happen when you have your own experts present in your own country. So the national cybersecurity culture and public awareness, as well as different education, exercise and training programs and special education for cyber experts is something that we all need to have. In Estonia, we started to mainstream cyber issues to all IT modules, and also we have created specialized master and PhD programs for cyber security experts only. Sometimes technical, but also organizational, because cybersecurity is not only a technical issue. It is largely procedures, processes, people, and technology. So technology is 1/4 in this bigger picture. We are, of course, the country that has raised lots of questions, and we are very glad to also export our knowledge on national cyber resilience. And I think today we have Mr. Tõnu Tammer from the Estonian CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team, as a last speaker, who will explain how to address the threats in cyberspace, how to prevent, manage and recover from those threats, and how cyberspace could be protected on a national level, because it's only if our cyber systems on national level are strong enough that we can also secure the global cyber stability. Thank you.